Halloween is just around the corner, and while this year may feel a bit scarier than Hallows past, for many reasons, here's how to protect your pup from getting the spooks. Welcome back to Alpha Paw, your destination for everything dog. I'm Bernie Zilio, and I'm on a mission to answer every doggone question you have ever had about your fur babies. And today, we're talking about how to protect your dog on Halloween. Fortunately, with us today, we have an expert vet, Dr. Ross Bernstein. Dr. Ross is a seasoned veterinary professional and pet care expert. He earned his doctorate degree in veterinary medicine at the UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine, and his work has been featured in several industry-leading publications, including the Journal of Veterinary Surgery. He is our go-to vet for everything we want and need to know about our fur babies. So welcome back to Alpha Pod, Dr. Ross.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So the topic of today is Halloween. Now, I know this year is going to look a little different from years past, but I think we can all anticipate that there will be some trick-or-treaters and some usual Halloween activity going on. So I think the biggest thing on everyone's mind is how do we protect our dogs from consuming Halloween candy?
Yeah, that's definitely going to be one of the biggest concerns on Halloween is the candy, and especially the chocolate. So I want to make sure that we're keeping it away from the dogs. If your kids have it, I want to make sure that they're keeping that away from the dogs. And so if they eat chocolate, other candy too, but chocolate's probably the biggest concern. We want to make sure that they don't do that or do it as little as possible.
Okay, now why is chocolate such a concern for our dogs?
This is one of the most common issues that vets see on Halloween. So we want to make sure that we're all up to date on what happens if your dog eats chocolate. Fortunately, it's almost never fatal. Your dog would probably have to eat quite a lot, but just like any other toxin, it depends on how much they ate. So if your Great Dane ate just 2 Hershey Kisses, that's probably not so much to worry about. But if your little Chihuahua did, then maybe that's a lot more for that dog. So the most important things is what kind of chocolate, whether it's milk chocolate, dark chocolate, or baking chocolate. That's actually the worst kind of chocolate because it has most of the toxic compound. I'll get to that in a second. And then how much your dog weighs. So like I was saying earlier, if it's a Great Dane versus a Chihuahua. So milk chocolate will have the least amount of the active component, which is called theobromine. It's a type of the toxic component is what's called a methylxanthine. And so chocolate actually has 2 methylxanthines in it, the theobromine and caffeine. Caffeine is in much smaller amounts in chocolate, so we're not really concerned about that. The biggest concern is theobromine. So depending on how much they ate, it can have varying degrees of toxicity. So if they had a little bit, then you probably start seeing GI signs. And GI signs mean vomiting, diarrhea, and that can be from the theobromine, but it can also be from the sugars, the butter, the flour, all the other stuff that goes into the candy. And so chocolate can come in many forms. It can come in cake, pudding, brownies, and there's also special brownies that we should be aware of. So those can have other chemicals in them too. There's actually calculators on the internet. You want to make sure you're finding a trusted website, but you can put in what type of chocolate, how much they ate, and your dog's weight, and it can tell you how severe of an exposure your dog had. And you just want to make sure that this is coming from a trusted website, because pretty much anyone could make one of these chocolate toxicity calculators. So you just want to make sure that it's coming from a trusted website. So if they ate a small amount, you might see the GI distress. Going from there, if they ate more, they can start to see cardiotoxic effects. So then they can start becoming agitated, their heart rate goes really high, they can start to have muscle tremors. After that, they can start to have neurotoxic effects. And going from the muscle tremors, those can lead to seizures and even coma. If your dog eats chocolate, the most important thing is to take them to your veterinarian so that they can do an assessment. And based on their exposure, your veterinarian will probably do and enter the type of chocolate and their weight into the calculator as well, so they know what to expect. But again, sometimes it's really hard to assess. Did my dog eat the whole bar or just half of the bar? Sometimes there's multiple dogs that are all eating the chocolate and you don't know who ate what.
That's very helpful. I also have no idea what kind of person would just like create a fake chocolate toxicity calculator and just upload it. But it's good to know that there is a game plan if our dogs do get into Halloween candy. Now, another supposed or potential threat would be if we do have the Halloween candy, we're expecting trick or treaters. What are some of the risks associated with having kids, random people knocking on our doors, expecting candy? Is there something that we should be preparing our dogs for? How do we handle that?
That's going to come down to you knowing your own dog. If your dog is one that gets very nervous every time someone comes and rings the doorbell and starts barking and goes crazy and gets very anxious, then you want to make sure your dog is in a safe, quiet place where they're not bothered by all the trick-or-treaters and potentially kids wearing scary costumes. Sometimes that freaks dogs out a bit too. So you want to know your dog, know what situation they're going to be in, and try to make the best environment for them that you can. And if people are coming to the door a lot, just make sure that it's always closed after people leave so that your dog doesn't run away. Very
much appreciated. Definitely keeping those notes down. Now, this next one is something that I've actually seen people debate online, and it's dog Halloween costumes. So I plan on dressing my dog up this year, and I have in years past. So I wanted to know from you, is there any sort of inherent like threat, or is it bad for your dog to put them in a Halloween costume?
I don't think it's bad per se, but you just want to make sure that the costume that they're wearing isn't too tight. It doesn't hinder them when they're walking around. They can still move appropriately. It's not catching on anything. In some types of costume, you want to make sure they don't overheat. If there are pieces that they could chew off potentially, you don't want that to happen, because if they chewed off a piece, you want them to swallow it. That could lead to intestinal problems. So I think it's fine as long as they're supervised and you're being a good pet parent and making sure that they're okay when they're wearing it.
Perfect. There you have it, everybody. So stop shaming people for putting their dogs in costumes as long as they're supervised and they're not being restricted in any sort of dangerous way. So finally, my last question regarding Halloween for you, Dr. Ross, is a lot of us, even though we may not be going out this Halloween, we're still partaking in like the traditional indoor activities, like carving pumpkins or decorating the house with like fall decor. Are there certain things we should be looking out for in case the dog does consume raw pumpkin or does eat some of the fall decorations?
I've never really seen a case of a dog getting sick from eating raw pumpkin. I don't think it's really that common, but I guess if he ate so much pumpkin that it made him sick, I'm sure it's possible. Probably one of the bigger concerns is if you're using sharp tools like knives, carving tools, that your dog doesn't start chewing those or get cut in any way with those. But eating pumpkin by itself, that's actually okay for dogs. They can definitely eat pumpkin. If it's been sprayed with some sort of chemicals for preservation reasons for Halloween, sometimes they're painted, sometimes there can be toxic chemicals on the pumpkin themselves. So don't want to eat those. If the pumpkin has gotten wet and moldy for whatever reason, if it's outside for 2 or 3 months, and I haven't seen a case of that, but I'm sure it could happen that the pumpkin gets moldy. And then again, you wouldn't want your dog to eat anything moldy, including pumpkins.
Got it. Now, is there anything else that we need to be aware of in terms of our dogs and keeping them safe on Halloween?
I think the biggest one is the chocolate, and you want to prevent your dogs from eating candy and eating things that they're not usually eating. If your dog is going to be the nervous type of dog, if people are always coming to the doorbell, make sure they have a safe place to go that's quiet and they're not going to be disturbed every 10 minutes when a trick-or-treater comes. And then if you are going to dress them up, make sure that their costume is appropriate. It's not choking them, it's not catching on anything, and they're not going to chew pieces off of it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ross. I'm very appreciative of this information. I'm sure we all are. I know holidays, we just want to enjoy ourselves, but we also want to make sure our dogs are kept safe. So this has been very informative. Do you have more questions for Dr. Ross? Leave them in the comment section below. Again, I'm Bernie Zilio, and this is Alpha Paw. Be sure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a single doggone episode. We'll see you next time.